I would now like to invite Mr. Shashi Dharan, Managing Director, Bharat Exhibitions, to kindly propose the welcome address. Over to you, sir.
The welcome has to be from TV Set. Unfortunately, TV Set could not join us, so Rajat will give the welcome. I just wanted to say a few words before we start this. Sir, we started this event, as you see, the 6th International. 6 years back we started, and today 5G is a reality. And last week, our Prime Minister has announced for 6G. So next year, our event will be on 6G, 14th May 2023. So event will be on 6G. We have already declared the date, 14th May. And today I have read that a lot of departments has been given the instruction to go ahead with the 5G, which is come in all the papers. We all read today that. So thank you very much for all your supports that we did 3G, finally 3G launched, then 4G, then 5G. Now the 5G is a reality. And I would like to thank each one of you who has joined us from the head table, the general co-chair, all the other distinguished speakers, and all the delegates, speakers, and invitees. And special thanks to the Signals Indian Army, which my dad used to work. He retired in 78. I'm so proud of the signal officers sitting here. Thank you, General Saab. Thank you, Brigadier Saab. Thank you, Colonels. All of you are here. And I also would like to wish you all a happy Onam, which I come from the part of Kerala. So today and tomorrow, I didn't know that it was a Onam when I decided the date. But anyway, so I wish you all a happy Onam. Tomorrow we will have a payasam and the South Indian dishes in lunch. So don't miss it. So I would like to thank each one of you who's coming, and I request Rajat to propose the welcome note.
Thank you very much, Shashi. And let me start by saying that on behalf of TV Ramachandran, he is extremely disappointed that he has not been able to join us today. He was actually down in Bangalore, and the original plan was that he was going to join us virtually, but even that was not possible. So I'm afraid you are going to have to deal with me reading out his address on his behalf. So my apologies for that. So let me first wish everybody here a very good evening. Is R.K. Saxena, has he joined us? Oh, great. Mr. Saxena, our chief guest, thank you so much for joining us this evening. On behalf of each and every one of us, 5G India International Conference, and I'm reminded that it's the 6th one. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Saxena. And I would like to just mention, we are talking here about 5G being a reality. Who better than the wireless advisor who in the DOT has been partially responsible for ensuring that the 5G spectrum auction took place. The distribution of the auction happened seamlessly to all the operators. And for that, the wireless advisor, Mr. R.K. Saxena, needs a tremendous round of applause. Thank you so much for that, sir. For the benefit of those who don't know me, my name is Rajat Mukherjee, as I was introduced, and I am the Director General at the Broadband India Forum, who are very proudly associated with the Bharat Exhibitions in bringing you this 5G conference. So once again, a very hearty welcome to each and every one of you. India is in the process of rapidly accelerating the digital infrastructure in a holistic manner to accomplish the visions of Digital India, broadband for all, and to meet the NDCP targets for inclusive digital growth of the nations. These visions and targets intend to converge to achieve our goal of making India a digital economy worth $1 trillion by 2025. Very recently, the SBI released a note that stated that India has surpassed the UK as the 5th largest economy. In nominal GDP terms, India is now US dollars 3,894 billion versus UK's 3,684, contributing respectively 3.5% and 3.3% to the world GDP. Why would this data point be relevant, you ask? Because each of the 6 nations in this particular GDP count offer 5G services, except for India. With the recent auction of spectrum, and for this we have to thank Shri R.K. Saxena, with a net amount of 1.5 lakh crores having been netted by the government, it is our fervent hope that this anomaly of not being part of the 5G grouping will now be corrected. And then we will surely join the top 6 in the world in terms of GDP, as well as in terms of 5G network. The 5G is expected to be the next big leap in mobile broadband. Peak download speeds as high as 20 gigabits per second will enable specialized tasks like remote precision medicine, connected cars, virtual and augmented reality, and a wide array of IoT applications. Nationwide, a resilient 5G network will be needed to accommodate the growing demand for high-speed mobile broadband. Only high-speed, high-capacity, low-latency 5G broadband networks will meet the demands of increasing data-intensive applications. Moreover, 5G will support the massive number of devices that will simultaneously access the networks, and which will be far more than the 4G networks that we are currently used to can handle. Will also enable IoT applications in the areas of healthcare, education, energy, and transportation. Further, 5G will enable mobile-dependent users to fully partake in the global digital economy, especially as smartphones and other wireless-enabled devices become perhaps the only gateway to the internet for certain sections of the population. 5G represents increased economic opportunity through improved access to social services, such as healthcare, education, transportation, energy, and employment. And since the majority of the population is likely to depend on mobile services for online access, which is why 5G networks must be available widely and are made affordable, and need to support emerging technologies that address the common issues of public interest and provide large-scale benefits. The government and the private sector are both collaborating in the deployment of 5G while deepening their capacity and reaching out to the communities in the utmost need for high-speed broadband access. And therefore, 5G must be made available nationwide, must be made affordable, and must be made resilient to ensure that all sections of the population benefit from it. Nationwide, a resilient 5G network will also be needed to accommodate the growing demand for high-speed mobile broadband. Only high-speed, high-capacity, low-latency 5G broadband networks are likely to meet the demands of data-intensive applications. High-capacity and high-throughput operations will also be supported through 5G networks making scaled IoT deployments even more cost-effective. 5G and IoT can also be used in providing for life-saving devices and applications in the areas of healthcare, energy, and transportation. Compared to the existing 4G LTE, 5G is likely to bring higher bandwidths, lower latency, and enhanced connectivity. But much more than that, the 5G bandwidths are projected to be 10 times higher than the 4G and LTE that we are currently experiencing, which will contribute to faster transmission of data, images, and videos. Lower latency will also enable high-speed virtual and augmented reality videos without delays or glitches. Mobile connectivity will be strengthened through small cell architecture, which will densify 5G wireless signals and improve their movement through concrete buildings and walls. Small cell antennas, which can be the size of a pizza box, which will also enhance small service supporting more devices on the same network at the same time. Basis the kind of spectrum bands that got sold in the recent 5G auctions, it is expected that business models that embrace a multi-band spectrum approach that leverages both high, mid, and low bands would best serve the needs of the diverse users and their use of IoT applications and devices by providing greater coverage. This can help promote proliferation of broadband coverage in both urban and rural communities. The government and the regulator are also reportedly working on coming out with a policy on use of street furniture and small cells, as that would be critical in serving populations which are vastly concentrated presently in urban areas. Local, state, and self-governments and municipalities need to support the streamlining of the siting and approval processes and standardize small cell deployments on utility poles and street furniture at a minimum or zero cost and with blanket permission for these installations. Slow and expensive permissions for the use of street furniture to house small cells could not only stifle the 5G deployment, but also lead to slower network upgrades, resulting in lags in the functions of critical IoT applications in healthcare, public safety, and other areas. From an infrastructure perspective, combined spectrum opportunities that broaden both the capacity and coverage, along with the blanket permission at zero or nominal cost for deployment of small cell antenna on street furniture, public utilities, and the ease of deployment through fiber, through facilitation by way of quicker permissions and reasonable costs associated with the right of way, are reasonable measures that are essential for the proliferation of 5G. We believe that 5G must be made affordable for consumers, despite massive telecom investments and costs that are required. These 5G networks will be expensive to deploy, particularly as service providers are projected to invest in multiple avenues of digital infrastructure, including in spectrum, radio access network, infrastructure, transmission, and core networks. It is expected that telecom companies alone could invest up to 500 billion rupees over the next 5 years in building our 5G networks. The largest expenditure for many such service providers will be in small cells to drive wireless capacity. The government needs to step in and provide an enabling and facilitating licensing and regulatory environment to help in meeting this objective. And as efforts to advance 5G to become more affordable and available to all, policymakers, together with the industry and consumer groups, must come together and work diligently in a collaborative manner to identify and support 5G network deployment and adoption nationwide. especially in ways that can enable everyone to be exposed to the power and potential of 5G, bringing the benefits of 5G to all. With this, I'd like to hand back to the organizers on behalf of TV Ramachandran, and I'd like to wish 5G India 2022 a phenomenal success. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, sir, for those warm words of welcome and for setting the tone for the today's, in fact, the two-day international conference on 5G India 2022. And ladies and gentlemen, I have now the proud privilege in welcoming Dr. Sam Tawfiq, Director, 3GPP Mobile Competence Center, who has joined us on the virtual mode. A very warm welcome to you, sir. And I hand over to you for the introductory address.
Thank you very much for the introduction and for inviting me. I hope you hear me well and can see the slides. I'm Isam Tawfiq, Director of the 3GPP Mobile Competence Center. I would first like to thank the organizers for inviting me to this event. It is very unfortunate that I could not be with you physically, but I'm extremely delighted to be part of this important and prestigious event that is 5G India, and give this address on behalf of ETSI and 3GPP. Today's theme is 5G and economical growth, and in order to better grasp how 5G can help accelerate the growth for the different industry sectors and accelerate it and support it, it is also very important to understand how the cellular wireless communications ecosystem evolved compared to previous generations. In previous generations, and namely 3G and 4G, the main use case was offering an evolved mobile broadband for customers. 5G does, of course, support this use case, and not only support this, but also brings a considerable amount of enhancements in terms of coverage, capacity, allowing operators to find new ways for revenues. And I assume that you are, most of you are familiar with the illustration in this screen, which is the ITU triangle, and two other use cases that 5G supports and which are of extreme importance to the industries. The second use case, in addition to the mobile broadband, is the ultra-reliable and low-latency communications. So with extremely reliable communication links and the latency as low as 1 millisecond, 5G offers the possibility to support new applications and new use cases that were not conceivable so far with the previous generations. And applications are very diverse and applicable to almost every sector. So we are here talking about healthcare, but also education and all the use cases that have been listed in the previous address. The third and also extremely important use case offered by 5G is the massive machine type communications and support of IoT. We are here talking about billions of devices supported by the 5G system. And it is actually the combination of these three use cases that will offer an extreme flexibility for the different industry sectors to support their economies, but also unleash new applications and new use cases in support of an economical growth for the society in general, but in individual cases for the industry. Of course, being the first generation that actually integrates these two use cases from the start, this attracted many new actors to the standardization work. And this is something we actually notice on the membership of 3GPP, but also from the partners that are joining the project. We see a lot of interest coming from what we call the verticals. These are the non-usual or historical players in the telco domain. And the illustration in the slide shows the partners of 3GPP, the market representation partners that joined 3GPP and the dates of at which they became part of the project. And you could see that around the start of 5G, which was in about 2015, many new players joined the projects, and we see participation now from sectors such as the aeronautics, agriculture, healthcare, and satellite communications. And these are only a few examples. This also is reflected on the member companies that are joining 3GPP, of course. So in the first minutes of this address, I was talking on how 5G would help industries achieve the growth that we are expecting. And in order to illustrate this, 5G is a very rich technology with many features, but I choose three features which are, in my opinion, extremely important and will support the industries to illustrate this. The first one is the support of non-public networks. When we look at the industrial sectors that we want to serve, it is clear that relying purely on a public network is not always the most appropriate or efficient way. There are cases where, for example, a hospital, a port, or a factory plant would like to have a non-public, and which would be the most efficient and appropriate to support their production. And there are cases also where the plant would own their own network, but would like to have this managed with an external service provider. And there are also, in the third case, industrial regions who may want to lease a slice, and the network slicing is a feature supported by 5G, to lease a slice for the public network that they operate and manage themselves. So what 3GPP and 5G did is to look at all these three scenarios and standardize the use case where a plant can use a public mobile network as the service provider from one side, or have a completely non-public network, or what we call also private network, or any hybrid solution in between. This flexibility offers a great potential for industries to flexibly choose the deployment that serves better their interests. The second and also very important change that 5G brings is the inclusion of non-terrestrial components within 5G. Previous technologies, 4G and 3G, either didn't support at all non-terrestrial networks, or this was an add-on, non-integrated into the system that came later. 5G was designed from the start to offer the possibility of supporting non-terrestrial connectivity. And once this is achieved, it will offer customers and also devices the possibility to move seamlessly from terrestrial networks to non-terrestrial networks. This will, of course, offer great opportunities to offer a coverage in sparsely populated areas, but also in areas where the land systems are not deployed. We can also imagine disaster situations where the land system is down and where the non-terrestrial connectivity will take over and then offer mission-critical communication possibilities. The global integration of non-terrestrial coverage with the terrestrial will, of course, offer a huge set of possibilities for industries as well. And one thing that is of particular interest is that cellular communications in 5G will also support IoT. And we talked already about massive capacity for IoT and machine type communications. Here, the domains of applications are very vast. And I choose one illustration here to give a simple example where we have a container ship with chips on that ship and with containers in that ship being tracked and aggregated in a gateway, which is in the bridge of that ship. This is a very simple use case that would allow, for example, the containers owners to track where their containers are everywhere in the world. It is a very simple case, but once you aggregate these devices in that ship with all the clusters that are shown in the illustration, we are approaching the maximum capacity of IoTs. And here we are talking something like 1 million of devices per kilometer square. In order to facilitate the support of massive IoT, 3GPP through 5G did standardize several features, of course. And to give a few examples, we can imagine the case of electricity meters in a large city. If those meters are to talk at the same time, that will cause congestion and disruption to the network. So 3GPP standardized the randomization of when these devices are to communicate, but also the case where when the management of these devices would like to address those, there is what we call device grouping, where a communication is set to a set of groups. In that case, for example, the electricity meters within a city. So here I choose 3 simple examples, but 5G is extremely rich in terms of features that brings a lot of flexibility and a lot of use cases that industries and society in general can benefit from. Now, to see or address where we are with the standardization of 5G, the road to 5G started back in 2015. And in the meantime, we already finished phase 1 and phase 2 of 5G, and these are release 15 and release 16. And both of these releases were submitted to ITU as being the 3GPP solution for 5G. Release 15 defined a new radio, which is called NR, and also a core network. And release 16 came to complete the offering of 5G by the support of ultra-reliable communications and the massive IoT. These 2 releases are being widely deployed. According to the latest report from GSA, we have 214 commercial 5G networks deployed in the world across 85 countries. And as these 5G networks are being deployed, we receive feedback from the industry into 3GPP, which leads then to enhancements and new cases supported in the 3GPP specifications. Now that India is on the verge of also deploying 5G, we are very keen and looking forward to receiving also the feedback from our Indian members. Release 17, which is the 3rd release of 5G, has been very recently also completed. So we had the functional freeze in March of this year, and a freeze of the ISN1 code and API codes by June. And work is underway in the normative phase of release 18. Both release 15 and release 16 made built the foundations for the support of the different use cases that 5G offers. Release 17 and 18 come to build on top of these foundations to offer capacity and efficiency improvements. And then he mentioned a few examples like the non-public network and non-terrestrial networks, but also to expand into the support of the vertical use cases. And here we see already work items on the health sector, the support of drones, asset tracking, and factory automation. I'm not going to go to the detail, as you can imagine, of this slide, but it is just to illustrate how rich and how many features that 5G is trying to build across the different releases that we specify. This is the priorities of the different standardization groups in release 18, which, as I said, is underway. And just to mention that release 18 marks the mid-generation for 5G, and it is being marketed as 5G Advanced. As we heard at the start of this conference, we are already having a lot of discussions and talks about beyond 5G, and namely for 6G. I'm not going to talk very much about 6G. There is only one particular point I wanted to emphasize, is that what made the success of the previous generations and 5G is the fact that we have one global standard. And I think it is extremely important that all actors and all partners come together and support the fact that we make 6G also a success by offering a one standard that is deployable globally. That concludes my address. Again, thank you very much for the honor of having me today, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much indeed, sir, for the introductory remarks. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I take this opportunity once again to welcome our Honorable Chief Guest, Shri R.K. Saxena ji, who is the Wireless Advisor, Department of Telecommunication, Ministry of Communications, Government of India, who has joined us virtually. Ladies and gentlemen, let's once again put our hands together to welcome our Honorable Chief Guest, Shri R.K. Saxena. And sir, hand over to you for the inaugural address. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Rajat. Thank you, Mr. Isam. And also thanks to Mr. T.V. Ramchandran, Mr. Bhattacharya, and all others connected with the event. Good evening to all distinguished panelists on the dais, colleagues from the government, distinguished delegates from the industry, members of the media, members of the organizing committee from Bharat Exhibition, Bharat Sanchar, and Broadband India Forum, etc. Friends, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, let me thank the organizers, Broadband India Forum and Bharat Exhibition, for inviting me to provide the special keynote address during this inaugural ceremony of this annual flagship event 5G India, with a theme, driving next phase of economic growth with 5G. India is in the process of rapidly accelerating the digital infrastructure in a holistic manner to accomplish the visions of a digital India, broadband for all, and to meet the NDCP targets for inclusive digital growth of the nation. These visions and targets would converge to help achieve our goal of making India a digital economy worth $1 trillion by 2025. One of the key drivers of digital India shall be 5G, which is expected to be one of the key technologies which will truly enable digital transformation. Not only 5G is expected to digitally transform the telecom sector, it is also expected to digitally transform all other verticals. DOT had set up an inter-ministerial committee along with 14 other ministries As part of this initiative, the DoT has given objective to explore the incorporation of the benefits of 5G technology into public infrastructure. With 5G increasing the scope of telephony by manifold, the use cases in the discussion include a private network for police communications, incorporation of 5G technology in hazardous applications such as mining and application in public network, public water works systems, or for agriculture, etc. So far, the DoT has conducted a number of multi-stakeholder meetings with the ministries on developing vertical specific 5G use cases, with the goal to familiarize the ministries with the existing 5G technology for the ministries to develop relevant user cases utilizing the same. We cannot have 5G without spectrum. The government has really worked very hard for the past few years to make this a reality and to make 5G spectrum available to the service providers. This process started with identification of 5G specific spectrum bands, then getting adequate spectrum, which involved getting certain spectrum bands released from concerned stakeholders and putting together sufficient spectrum for the 5G auction. My colleague Mr. Rajat has uh, said a lot in praise of wireless advisor, the head of this department, WPC wing. In fact, I compliment I compliment my team, WPC, for this achievement, and I take this opportunity uh, through this event to thank the entire team of WPC wing, whosoever is listening, so to act dynamically to support each and every step and all the decisions, such as automation of the entire SECFA process, deemed approval for SECFA applications, then evolution of SUC, widening of microwave spots for backhaul, and the most important one is timely allocation of spectrum of the recent auction. You must have heard a lot about that in past 30 years. Sunil Mittalji, Sunil Bhati Mittalji has stated that was really motivating to all of us uh, that it has happened for the first time in past 30 years that the spectrum has been made available as soon as the payment was over. So these quick actions on these issues of the telecom industries, these are really going to matter a lot and will catalyze the growth of this vital sector and facilitate the timely and extensive rollout of 5G services in the country. More importantly, it paves the way for a sustainable competition to serve a large market like India. These decisions will also contribute towards the growth of the nation by serving the common man. So, once again, I say I compliment and take this opportunity to thank the entire team of WBC and of course the other wings, especially the finance wing of DOT, who are involved. And also, it all happened under the able guidance of our Secretary, Telecom and Member Technology, and indeed, and of course, Honorable MOC and MOSC. So, thanks to everybody there. Let me add that TRI played a very significant role in deciding the band plan, the price of spectrum, the spectrum caps, the rollout guidelines, etc., all in record time. Spectrum was made available in all the bands, that is lower bands, mid bands, and optimal for 5G, and higher millimeter bands, which are the capacity bands. Post the cabinet approval and issue of notice NIA, the spectrum auctions were held successfully, where more than 50 gigahertz out of total 72 gigahertz spectrum which was put to auction, it was sold at a record auction price of 1.5 lakh crore. This is a record for the department and for this country. And at this point of juncture, I would like to thank all the TSPs, all the service providers, COI, and all those who have participated in this auction to participate in the auction with full will and with full belief in the government. So salute to them. With 5G spectrum made available now for all the operators in different spectrum bands, the country eagerly awaits the rollout of 5G service. And all these operators are ready. We have made, we have taken all possible steps, like in small cells we were talking. So we have eased out the process, SECFA process. We have basically done away that for small cells so that it rolls out quickly. And we have given experimental licenses to all the operators at various locations. So they are already in practice and they are already ready. And now once the payment has been done and frequency allocation has been done, I'm sure they must be with full heart and with full will. They must be preparing for the installation, commissioning, and then finally the rolling out of 5G services in the country. 5G will enable mobile dependent users to fully partake in the global digital economy, especially as smartphones and other wireless enabled devices. Perhaps the only gateway to the internet for certain sections of the population. 5G represents increased economic opportunity through improved access to social services such as healthcare, agriculture, maritime, education, mining, transportation, energy, and employment, etc. etc. Since majority of the population is likely to depend on mobile services for online access, which is why 5G networks must be widely available, affordable, and able to support emerging technologies that address common issues of public interest and provide large-scale benefits. 5G must be available nationwide, made affordable and resilient to ensure that all sections of the population benefit from it. And I'm dead sure that all the TSPs must be working very hard towards achieving this goal. Nationwide, resilient 5G networks will also be needed to accommodate the growing demand for high-speed mobile broadband. Only high-speed, high-capacity, low-latency 5G broadband networks will meet the demands of data-intensive applications. High-capacity and high-throughput operations will also be supported through 5G networks, making scaled IoT deployments even more cost-effective. 5G and IoT can also be used in providing for life-saving devices and applications like robotics, etc., which would make the entire healthcare sector very, very efficient. And we are going to notice it tremendously. The government is working on coming out with a policy on use of street furniture and small cells. As I said, already we have eased out the process, but further, like the coordination with the state governments, chief secretaries, all those things are parallelly being done through our top superiors interaction with them, so that a smooth rollout and a smooth installation and commissioning of street furniture and small sets takes place to bring the 5G services as soon as possible, effectively and smoothly. Because that would be critical in serving population which is vastly concerned in urban areas. Local state governments and municipalities, definitely their support is required, and they need to support the streamlining of the siting and approval process. And municipalities need to support the streamlining of the siting and approval process and standardize small cell deployments on utility poles and street furniture at minimum or zero cost and with the blanket permission. And the ministries, we are interacting with the ministries for this purpose. Slow and expensive permissions for use of street furniture to house small cells could not only stifle 5G deployment and also lead to slower network upgrades, resulting in lacks in the functions of critical IoT applications in healthcare, public safety, and other areas. And so a caution. So we are careful from that side. From an infrastructure perspective, combined spectrum opportunities that broaden both the capacity and coverage, along with blanket permission at zero or nominal cost for deployment of small cell antenna on street furniture, public utilities, and ease of deployment of fiber through facilitation by way of quicker permissions and reasonable costs associated with ROW are reasonable measures that are essential for the proliferation of 5G. We believe that 5G must be made affordable for consumers despite massive telecom investment and costs that are required. 5G networks will be expensive to deploy, particularly as service providers are projected to invest in multiple avenues of digital infrastructure, including spectrum, radio access network, infrastructure, transmission, and core networks. Telecom companies alone are expected to invest 500 billion rupees over the next 5 years in building out 5G networks. The largest expenditure for many service providers will be in small cells to drive wireless capacity. The government needs to step in and provide an enabling and facilitating licensing and regulatory environment to help in meeting this objective. As efforts to advance 5G to become affordable and available to all, policymakers together with the industry and consumer groups must come together and work diligently in a collaborative manner to identify and support 5G network deployment and adoption nationwide, especially in ways that can enable everyone to be exposed to the power and potential of 5G and bring benefits of 5G to all. To end the to end my talking, let me once again say a few words of praise, and let me again thank and compliment my team WPC and team WP Finance of DOT and all others from administration side who have been interacting with, as I said, with the state government chief secretaries and all that. So, in order to ease out in its process of small cell and street furniture. So, I'll say that once again, and I'll thank Mr. Rajat, Mr. T.V. Ramachandran, Mr. Debashish Bhattacharya, uh, uh, Mr. Isam Haq. So, and for inviting me here and giving me an opportunity to say few words. I am really thankful. And last, not last, let me also, through this forum, through this event, let me also convey my sincere thanks on behalf of Team WPC and from myself side to Lieutenant General Dr. S.P. Kocher, COAI, Director General, uh, who have very recently sent some few words in praise of the work of Team WPC towards this successful auction to my secretary. And last but not the least, uh, one of the participants here is Miss Revti also. She's Senior Deputy Virus Advisor with our department. And just to make all of you aware about that she has been nominated as RRB Radio Regulation Board member from on behalf of our country and doing very good. So I wish her success with that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, sir, for that informative inaugural address. Thank you once again. And ladies and gentlemen, I now have the proud privilege in inviting for the special address Lieutenant General Dr. S.P. Kocher, Director General COAI. And over to you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together once again to welcome our very special guest, Lieutenant General Kocher.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, let me thank the organizers for giving me an opportunity to be here, especially TBR in absentia, Rajat and Shashi, and all my erstwhile colleagues, present day colleagues, and all the experts sitting here in the hall. As DGCOI, 90% of our time goes on issues relating to 5G. Is it because I'm enamored with 5G? I think I've got fed up of listening to low latency, ultra low latency, high capacity. Is that what is driving the nation today? Is that the hype with the nation? I don't think so. I think we've gone past that. As technologists, yes. 5G is a leap forward. It's a different technology. We saw such a change happening when we went from 2G to 3G. Smartphones came in and we found adaptation taking a slow pace and then picking up. There's something similar is going to happen in 5G. I asked my DDG when I joined COI that what is 5G? Isn't it an upgrade of 4G? He said, no, it is not. Very sternly, he told me 5G is a different technology. Yes, it is. Now I agree. Okay. And this is a new branch which has taken off, 5G, 6G and onwards. And therefore, we will see that 5G is going to bring in much more value to the ecosystem than what we've ever seen before. Something like what happened from 2G to 3G. 3G didn't last too long. I'm making a prediction, 5G is not going to last too long. It is going to be 4G to 6G very soon. Because by the time we get adapted to 5G, 6G will be on our heads. And what is it that 5G will bring in its wake? Important to understand that person A, person B, and the nation looks not at technology as technology. They see how it is going to affect our lives. And 5G has the potential of improving our lives physically as well as economically. And that puts the onus not on networks, not on technology, but on the applications which ride on 5G. And what is it that is different from 4G, which makes 5G so important and so much talked about in the world today? Basically, the adaptability and flexibility which is brought out by what I just said, low latency and high bandwidth, and higher capacity to aggregate consumers or customers. Now, customers, first time in technology, is going to include sensors. It is going to include machines. It is going to include humans, which means a huge behemoth of subscribers. 5G can accommodate them. Could not have been done in 4G without massive rollouts. And to top all of this, I must congratulate the government and the industry for putting the shoulders together and making an environment which will make this happen. Though today, as we stand here, we all say that there are going to be applications, and a number of speakers have spoken about the types of applications are going to be there: agriculture, mining, education, so on. But I think 5G is going to affect every aspect of life, and therefore the well-being of every citizen is going to be dictated with the applications which adopt 5G, and the early movers will adopt and bring benefit to its users faster. I also make an assertion that it is not the subscriber, the individual subscriber, who is going to lead adoption of 5G. It is the enterprise. And from the enterprise will come indirect benefits to the consumer, and the services that will be offered by the enterprises will force the consumer to then adopt to 5G, the common consumer. Today, standalone, if we take away the enterprise or if we take away the industry, do you think it makes too much of a difference to you and me as common citizens to pay more for a handset of 5G or to avail the services at higher tariffs? It doesn't. But when we have 5G benefits accruing from adoption by adaptation by the industry, yes, we will. We have seen this happen earlier. India has the biggest digital adaptation of tools like UPI. You go to a panwala, he has that QR code. You go to any place in the country, you won't find these things happening anywhere in the developed world. And this is going to happen in 5G also, because the Indian intellect, the Indian mindset is jugaad, and jugaad is going to bring in a lot of benefits to us. So what is it that 5G is going to change, which has not been done by 4G? Basically, as my colleagues from the Indian Army are sitting here, from the industry are sitting here, there are three factors we must keep in mind which will increase the production capability of the country, increase the economic benefit of the country. One is time. Time is important, that things should be done faster. And 5G brings that. Second is space. They understand space differently, you understand space differently, but your area of influence, your area of coverage has to increase. 5G has the capability of doing that. Somebody mentioned 10 times the bandwidth, 100 times the capacity building. What is it? You are increasing space at lesser time, which means production capability will increase. The third factor is how much of traffic, how much of subscribers can you accommodate on those digital highways which are going to be set up by 5G. So if you put all this together, the production capability of enterprise is going to increase, which will bring direct and indirect benefits to the population, and hence 5G is going to improve the capability, economic capability of the country. Why are we not talking of all the sectors? We are talking only of 5 or 6 sectors. You go to any symposium or to a seminar, people talk only of 5-6 sectors which 5G is going to be used in. Why not all? I'm saying it's going to be used in all the sectors. The reason is not too far to see. When you're changing from one mode of technology to another mode of technology, the application generators tend to see the new technology with spectacles of the old technology. So when we're looking at 5G, we are looking at low latency and high capacity with 4G in mind. As we go along, we will find that this is going to change. We are going to see the adaptability and flexibility which 5G will bring technically, and we will find more and more applications coming in. I'll give you an example. 15 days back, Ericsson did an pilot in which they partitioned the radio. They used network slicing and edge computing to give a partitioned slice of a network with different SLAs, much higher SLAs than what the parent network was giving. Nobody's thought of that. It was there in the textbooks. It was there being debated in labs, but nobody had seen this practically. But with this type of things happening, industry is going to adapt. And with this adaptation, we are lucky that we are in an era of Industry 4.0. Industry 4.0 is also coming in. And therefore, the permutations and combinations of Industry 4.0 and 5G and Wi-Fi 6 put together has immense possibilities. And it is going to bring a lot of economic growth to this country. And this country is a proud country, and we will look at the world as our market rather than the world looking at India as its market. And this is a leap of faith, and we are going to see a lot of things going to happen much beyond what we are thinking today. I think the organizers have chosen a very apt topic today, and I congratulate them for this. And in conclusion, I wish them all the best in their endeavors and for this seminar. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed, sir, for that very insightful special address. And now, ladies and gentlemen, for the keynote address of this session, I have the proud privilege in inviting Mr. Nuno Saraiva. He's the Vice Sales Consulting, Oracle Communications. And over to you, sir, for your presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together to welcome our keynote speaker.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Maybe just a brief introduction about myself, given that I am not from India. I am from Portugal in Europe. I lead a pre-sales organization at Oracle Communications, which is basically the telco vertical arm of Oracle. Oracle has 18 industry-specific global business units. And what I propose to bring today for the session is fundamentally, given that I have the luxury of seeing from my team what's going on in terms of 5G deployments out there, and specifically focusing on 5G standalone, where there is a core network of 5G, I'll give you a view of what's going on, what are the common denominators that we see carriers looking for, what do we see as the areas of innovation, where do we see the potential from an ecosystem perspective, right? So that's fundamentally how the long title of my presentation translates to, okay? So with that, let me just get going very quickly. So from a market perspective, one thing I wanted to clarify, or at least bring it as a data point, is IDC, the analyst company, has predicted that by 2025, there would be 55 billion IoT devices. 55 billion, okay? The amount of data used by those 55 billion devices in 3 years' time, mind you, just 3 years' time, will be way higher than what was generated and consumed worldwide over the last 30 years, okay? So One question I get asked a lot when I meet operators like the ones on this room is, what is the killer application for 5G? What is the use case that will help me justify the investment? And the short answer is no one knows. Okay, there are many ideas. We know what the technology enables. Now, what would be the killer one? No one knows. What we do know is the sheer scale of what we would expect in 3 years from now forces us as an industry to do a lot of changes. And above all, to look at the way we deploy a network in a way that is highly automated, that we can take business insights from the volumes of data we have, that we take analytics-driven decisions in the network, okay? And that we also expose capabilities to enterprise applications. And by the way, I couldn't agree more with the previous speaker. The added value in 5G is on enterprise, is to the enterprise market. Obviously, the end user behind the enterprise will benefit from the experience, will benefit from the technology, but the end consumer from an operator perspective will be the enterprises, okay? And the point I'm trying to make is, with a programmable network, a network where carriers can expose in a seamless way the networks to enterprises, it further fuels the capabilities to innovate. It further fuels the capabilities to experiment. Out of the 1,000 use cases that probably we will cover on those 2 days on this event, no one knows what will be the killer application. So it's the ability to experiment, it's the ability to innovate that will make a difference, and at scale. That's the important aspect. So the second point I'm trying to make on this slide is, if you look, and again, this is a worldwide market view. If you look at the spend on 5G, it is over 95% on the radio access network. That leaves less than 5% spend in the core network. You saw earlier the colleague from Etsy presenting GSA as a data point that 214 operators have launched 5G. The vast majority of those are 5G non-standalone deployments. That is a 5G radio connected to a 4G core. I can count with fingers in 4 hands how many operators have actually launched 5G standalone networks. These are networks where the core is also 5G enabled. However, the funny thing about this is, even though the investment or the cost is less than 5% in the core, from an operator standpoint, the differentiators are in the core. From the way an operator offers a service to an enterprise, how can differentiate themselves from the peer operators in the same market? It is not on the radio. Okay, so that's the second data point I wanted to share. So I'll spend some time on the next slides going through what are some of the aspects we see in our deployments, the deployments Oracle Communications has been enabled around the 5G core network. What are the operators looking for? What are some of the lessons learned, to at least give you that perspective of focusing in the core? Okay, and with that, maybe have better chances of understanding how we can monetize some of the use cases we heard earlier today, mentioning network slicing, mentioning ultra low latency, reliable communications. All of those use cases are only enabled in 5G standalone. Okay, so just to give you, I depicted 3 deployments, 3 projects where Oracle has been selected and either in deployment or live, doesn't matter for this discussion. I've also listed some references on the far right, upper right of customers that we have been selected and that there are public references. But the point I was trying to make on the left side is no size fits all. Point number 1, even though, as we've heard before, there has been a tremendous focus on standardization on 5G. The reality is what's standardized is mostly around network function to network function integrations. When we look at the underlying environment on which these core networks run, you will see 4 examples here that are all different, right? And they're all right. There's no right or wrong, okay? You will have customers like the Greenfield US customer you see on the top, that basically has decided to run their core network on a public cloud. Nothing wrong with that. It's their choice. Second customer you see there, tier one in the UK, is basically running an environment on-prem on top of an OpenStack architecture. Pretty much each vendor that is part of that solution brings their own cloud native environment. And that's the environment you may have heard about Cloud Native Compute Foundation. It standardizes a set of, or recommends a set of open source tools for observability, for container, for orchestration that typically are used in a 5G network. The applications are deployed in a cloud type environment. If that's in a public cloud or on-prem, that's not the topic for discussion, right? So that's scenario number two. Scenario number three, it's also an environment in the US, a tier one, where actually very similar to number two, we are running on an environment where every single network function provider brings their own cloud native environment to the mix, right? And the environment happens to run on basically a bare metal infrastructure that sits on-prem for the carrier. And last but not the least, a fourth tier one in the US that is running an environment based on, for example, Red Hat OpenShift, right? So the point I'm trying to make is we as an industry need to be flexible on the various deployment models for 5G core. There's not a one size fits all. The second point I want to highlight, as you can see on the picture, is all of these deployments use a variety of vendors. In our opinion, long were the days where it was easier for an operator to just pick a solution from one single vendor and go with it. The usual arguments were, it's too complicated. There's a lot of integration risks. It costs a lot of money. It adds time to market. That's why I'm going to a single vendor. Long were the days. We can today run a network with multiple vendors in the network. It works fine. We can promote interoperability. There is no problem whatsoever. I know that we have a colleague here, and just to as a plug, a colleague from Telenor. We have jointly run an activity with Telenor Research, which is a global function of Telenor, where we demonstrate an environment of a multi-vendor environment, and the whole thing was up and running in 2 weeks. 2 weeks, not 2 years. So the expectation that picking a single vendor will accelerate the deployment or reduce the risks of integration or reduce the costs, it's a myth in 5G. Okay, the type of technology used promotes a lot of interoperability. We as a vendor and many other vendors in the ecosystem have a lot of tools to promote interoperability. It does not create an interop risk. Okay, so that's the second point I wanted to make specific to this slide. Maybe a shameless plug, just to give a perspective, an analyst view on Oracle Communications. As I said, Oracle focuses on 5G core. We do not do radio. We do not do subscriber databases in the core. We do not do packet core. We focus on a subset of what 3GPP has specified on 5G core. And on the back of all I just said before, things are doing quite well for us. We have a variety of deployments already, and things continue to be quite good looking for us looking forward. The second point I was trying to make as an example, and it was actually one of the examples I had before on the previous chart. You may have heard of a greenfield operator in the US called Dish Networks. So Dish has been, I would say, probably one of the more disruptive service providers I have personally seen, right? So their CNO mark is quite aggressive in terms of being disruptive, challenging the team to always rethink the status quo about everything. And what Dish has done is pick various vendors that are part of their deployment, and some of them are attending this session today besides Oracle, run it in a public cloud, automate the hell out of the deployment. And when I say automate, I really mean, if you think the way a 3G or a 4G network is typically consumed, is we as a vendor, and any vendor joining this session will tell you, we gather requirements from a customer, we start development on a product. Several months after, we release a piece of software. The customer takes easily 3 to 6 months testing the software, runs the first office application, and then rolls it out in production. That means that from the time where there was a requirement until the software is actually live in the network, easily we can consume more than a year. With 5G, because of the nature of the architecture that is specified with using containerization, microservices, CI/CD pipelining, using continuous testing methodologies, using analytics, you can actually, and the way we deliver the software as well, right? So we, on our side, we deliver product increments every 3 months of software. We provide the software into a repository where customers just take the software, automatically load it on their CD pipeline, automatically test it, run canary testing, and roll it out. The whole thing takes less than few weeks, as opposed to the 1 year I mentioned before. So this is the level of automation we can do. And bear in mind, as I mentioned before, given the sheer scale of what we will expect in only 3 years, 55 billion devices, there is no way as an industry we can continue operating the way we have been so far. We, the industry, need to really reshape or rethink the way we do things, right? So automation, cloud native being an area of focus. Another, which is actually an area where we're quite luxury we have, is Oracle as a business unit, as a whole. We have 18 business units, all of them focus on different verticals. So we have the luxury of having my own sibling GBUs or global business units have specific requirements around communications for their services. So as an example, we have a retail GBU, we have a financial services GBU, we have an automotive GBU, a state and local government GBU. All of those global business units have specific 5G requirements, which give us a chance to experiment and see how can we use 5G network in those scenarios. And this is an area we're working quite closely with Dish right now in exploring the limit of the possibilities of what we can do to try to find that killer application I started the presentation about, right? And we may not find it, but at least let's experiment. And if we experiment 50 times, chances are one of them will be a killer application. As an enabler for innovation, one thing we do, and invite all of you to have a discussion with us in the interval. We have an Oracle Industry Lab that we just launched in Chicago. We're planning to do another one in Asia and another one in Europe this year. And over there, we actually experiment with ecosystem partners. What are some of the example 5G use cases, right? It may not be any of these that will fly, right? But for example, we'll demonstrate how 5G can be used by law enforcement agencies for situational awareness. Imagine the following sit-rep. There is a riot or some situation that requires a police car to be dispatched, several police elements in a crisis situation. We can gather real-time a lot of high-definition videos coming from wearable cameras from the police officers, 360-degree view cameras on the police car, so that whoever's at the dispatcher has situational awareness of the situation and can better control the situation on site. So that's one example. Another example, we have a construction engineering business unit as well. And there are a few use cases we demonstrate there. One is regarding, for example, for situational awareness in a construction site. What's going on? What's the progress on activities? Is everything okay with all the workers on a construction site? Or, for example, we sell project management software for construction sites. So one key challenge we have is how do we track the progress of tasks in a construction site, right? If I need to deploy in a very large construction site, 100,000 steel beams, and they just arrived on site, how many of those got deployed? How many of those got welded, right? If I can actually automate the process by which I feed into the project management software the status of that task, it makes the life of the end user way easier. Whoever is managing the construction site can now see real time the progress on the construction, right? And I'm not going in detail on all of this, but this is just to give you some ideas on how we can use technology to meet specific enterprise needs. And just to wrap up, not to hold anyone late for dinner, if I could summarize 5G for us is all about look at what we can do from an automation perspective. How can we handle the scale? How can we use analytics to automate all of this at the scale, at the hyper scale we need to manage? Think on how can multi-vendor environments bring innovation, right? And last but not the least, and maybe the more important one, how can you expose the network to external innovation? I'm sure that all of you, when you think about solving a problem, you'll come up with one idea. Someone may come up with an idea if you give them the tools that you would never have thought about it, right? So by opening up the network to third-party players in an ecosystem, the chances of innovation and the chances of everybody winning from it are beyond limits. And I do believe the technology provides us the tools to be very successful, as the outlook for 5G seems to suggest we will be. And with that, thank you.
Thank you indeed, sir, for that informative keynote address. And now, ladies and gentlemen, for the operator address, I have the privilege in inviting Mr. Avinash Mittal, Senior Vice President and Program Director, Technology Enabler, Telenor. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together to welcome Mr. Avinash Mittal.
Good evening. And thank you, Shashi, for inviting. Just a brief about Telenor, as we don't operate in India. So we are operating in 8 countries with around 172 million customers and around 16,000 employees. So I was just thinking, we all know about 5G capabilities. We talk about ultra reliable, low latencies, massive, machine type communications, high capacities, high bandwidths, all those things are there. Then we have a network slice. Is that sufficient to really bring the use cases, what we really need? What additional things which we are really looking for, which really makes us something, a package? And that's what I see. This is the right time for 5G, unlike 4G or 3G, where we have now edge computing. So edge cloud is available. We have a machine learning available. We have now a massive computing at a very low footprint and a low power that is available. We have applications which are cloud natives. So all these things, and then we have automations available. So if I put together everything, then I see now we have ingredients for a perfect storm. And that's where, if you look at the multiple industry sectors where we have done a pilots, and I'll be focusing on some of those pilots which we have done in Telenor in those countries. So we believe very strongly in our modernization journey with 5G. We launched in March 2020 in Norway, 5G, Oslo. And then we have out of 8 our business units, we have a 5G in 5 business units. And our basically the plan is to really augment the capacities and the coverage in current phase, which we are going on. And then, so basically we are not putting any 4G investments anymore. And then we move towards a complete 5G at a later stage where we release the 4G. So that's our plan. And basically, what we are looking is not only the connectivity, but how we can really bring these connectivities along with the ecosystem partners to bring a use cases for all the industry verticals. As we strongly believe that what 3G and 4G has done in the consumer space, now 5G along with all this ecosystem will bring the same thing as on the industry verticals. So these are some of the use cases. So a lot of our friends are sitting from defense. So what we have done a pilot is with Norwegian defense. And what they were looking is, because they have a huge network across the country, what they were looking was a fully isolated a network slice. The only difference is, of course, it was only on a pilot basis, but when it will be put into the operation, it will be countrywide on a public network, but fully isolated. Then what we have done are certain applications testing, which is a soldier is having its handset, and if there is a shot fired, now with these video analytics, that is able to detect that there is a shot fired, and whatever corresponding group it needs to be communicated, it can communicate that. Then there is a need for push to talk, where somebody just pushes, speaks something, and then it goes to the group which is in the user is in that group. So that push to talk application was supposed to has to be embedded and bring these 5G capabilities, because that is the end-to-end encrypted. So that testing was needed. And then they require a priority that in case of a disaster, any kind of a war or any kind of certain, such kind of issues comes up, then they really get a priority. And then, well, the country is, of course, compared to India, that country is not large, but within that country, what they want is a autonomous mobile edge. So completely solutions, private solutions. So even if they are cut off because of any war situations or anything, all the users can communicate within those zones. So there will be multi-one edge zones sitting in the country where they will be integrating. What was our experience, as my dear friend was speaking, that we really see that earlier it used to be like we are giving 4G and then we have certain networks. Now what we see is basically all the components which is needed, which is connectivity, which is cloud, security is extremely important, analytics is important. Then we have a devices and hardware ecosystem, all the IoT devices and other things are really needed, and applications and all the integration of these activities. And that's where we see that all these things needs to be worked with the user. So we worked with the defense, really understood what is the need, and try to create, co-create the, the whole ecosystem which is useful for them. The second pilot which we did was in Malaysia, which is on the port. So what we did was we put some 5-6 high definition cameras on the crane. And what is needed in a port operation is that when you are taking out the container, first thing you really need to know whether the container is damaged or not, right? Because the moment container is damaged, it triggers the insurance case. Second thing is whether the damaged container was during the shipment or during the port handling, because that also has a massive impact. And obviously the third part is where that container needs to go, because the whole, I'll say, smart management of the containers and the logistics. So this is something which again was a very important thing. Similar thing we did, I'll say, in Norway in a fish farm, where we put, the SD cameras in the fish farms, where we are able to identify that what kind of fishes are there, number of fishes, what is the length of the fishes, what is the feed which is given, whether there is overfeeding or not. So those kind of things which were needed. And again, what we saw is that working with the verticals and the whole ecosystem was extremely important, because what we did is earlier we have never worked with the camera vendors. We have never worked with the video analytics vendors, right? And of course, the cloud vendors we have been working, but when you start working with all the ecosystem vendors, then you really create those kind of a value add, which is really needed for these kind of use cases. The third one, which I'll cover, is the pilot on the smart hospitals. If you look at this green building, this is a completely new upcoming block in one of the hospitals of Norway. What they are looking is, they want is an entire setup to be done in that building, and of course then in the rest of the buildings also, where their all communication happens through in that private network, and that is again a completely autonomous, so that even if there is a cut outside, they are not impacted. If a patient is visiting inside, then it will be connected to a public network. So again, there is a slicing which is done. So it will be connected on a public network. And if the employees goes outside their own private network, then it will be again connected to a public network. So all kind of, the combinations which is needed for their use cases is part and parcel of, this kind of cases. So these were some of the use cases. So we did almost in most of the industries. We have done many of the pilot cases, and this is one of the things which we say now. This 5G ecosystem is really can bring a massive changes, and you can see a different pie. So small pie, large pie, but even the smallest pie is quite good enough to really make the changes and to really have a monetization. So this is what basically as a Telnor, what we are now trying to do is to really simplify ourselves, modernize ourselves, make us as a digital telco, so that we are not only focusing on a connectivity, but also focusing on beyond connectivity. And the one more very clear, what I have been repeating again and again is that industry collaboration. That's what we have been focusing, because application partners, our equipment partners, cloud partners, analytics, all those ecosystems needs to really work together, because that's what we believe, that it brings more value than the sum of each party. And this is again nothing else but you take any kind of a use case or any verticals, whether it's consumer services, broadcast and TV, AR. If you look at the business critical, I already covered the fish farming. Then you have all the industry now, a big business case or the use cases sitting in the industry, defense, disaster management, health management, so we have done work for a remote shipping also. So remote ship management also, we did one of the pilot where there is a 8-kilometer fjords distance, and that ship has to be completely remote controlled. So that also we have done and then we are also upbeat on the drones. So whatever industry you see, we see there is a business case, use case, which can really help industry to really grow and really help all of, as a user, as an industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And now, ladies and gentlemen, for the next operator address, may I invite Mr. Atul Sachdeva, EVP and National Planning and Deployment Head, Bharti Airtel. So let's put our hands together to welcome Mr. Atul Sachdeva for his presence.
I don't know. Good evening. First, I would like to thank Shashi and the supporting partners for inviting us. I think it's a time to congratulate Government of India, DOT, and all the industry partners who have made 5G auction is very successful. And this has really paved our way out in bringing India on the front map of fast technology adoptions, which we have demonstrated during 4G era also, and 5G is further ahead of curve. I think India has been fortunate enough now on 5G. I'll tell you why, because at the time when we are adopting 5G right now, the technology is matured. We'll get the best of the products. We'll get best of the use cases, and device ecosystem is also on an evolution stage. It is matured what it was 2 years back or 3 years back. So that means we'll get much more benefits on 5G, and we can actually juice out 5G much more efficiently than it used to have 2 years back. So India has been fortunate enough in getting the right investments at right point of time. So 5G is going to definitely excite all of us much more than what it would have been done 2 years back. I think on India context, we started this journey 20 years,
30 years back, 1992, when 2G started. And after that, we moved to 3G. It was from literally from voice to video, then to 4G, and then to 5G, which is a virtual world now. I think it's been 30 years, and from 2G to 5G is not a small journey. It took us time, but I think we have adopted 4G and 3G very, very fast. I think the example set by 4G and 3G dying down so early in India. Airtel was pioneer in 3G, shutting down 3G, maybe one of the first in the world. We only saw 3G as 5 to 6 years of its life, and that means the adoption by Indian customer and by Indian industry was very, very fast as compared to rest of the world. So it is a good news for 5G. That means the customers are more tech savvy. They are most advanced in India. So hence 5G is going to definitely give us benefits. India has also witnessed one of the largest consumption. We consume today are about 13 exabytes a month, put all operators put together. This doesn't include the broadband, the wired broadband connections at home. India is also consuming highest per capita user consumption, which is roughly 20 to 22 GB a month, which is also a highest one. We are also having now 1 billion plus connections. So that means it is the very, very right time for India to adopt 5G. We are at such a mature stage of 4G today. So 5G, we deserve 5G as soon as possible. I think a lot has been said about 5G, and we keep reading about 5G on the use cases. But our belief, my belief is there's no area where 5G cannot touch. There can be use cases. We can say there are multiple use cases: transport, mining, ports, manufacturing, education, healthcare, etc. But I don't think there is any area in our lives where it will not be used. 5G cannot bring a value in it. I think it's just not a technology. It's just not an upgradation of G. The way we have seen in 2G to 3G or 3G to 4G, it's altogether a lifestyle change. It's driven by a digital infrastructure, unlike 4G and 3G. It's driven by the use cases. It's driven by the applications rather than the upgradations in the technology. So that's the difference what it is going to bring between the previous G upgrades and the new G upgrades. We are also talking about 5G advanced and 6G. Somebody was talking about 6G. Shashi was talking when we started this event. We are talking about 6G. That means we are at an advanced stage of 5G. So definitely it's going to benefit India the most, unlike the other technologies. I think 5G is on three pillars. All of us have talked about it: low latency, 10x higher speeds, 10x lower latencies. I think all of this will lead to productivity increase, right? So productivity means economic growth. So productivity can be in manufacturing, can be in various other, at our homes, smart cities. It can be unending possibilities. The most important benefits, what we think from 5G would be on socioeconomic regions. For example, education and health sector, where people are deprived of data. People are deprived of timely data in farming, for example. People are deprived of healthcare, timely healthcare availability. These are the two areas where definitely it will make impact en masse, not just on the enterprise side, but en masse. One of the other things which 5G is going to bring for all of us as a country, which our responsibility is also that it is going to give us benefits on sustainability as well. 5G is much more efficient technology. It's much more spectral efficient. So hence the cost for producing a GB or the energy consumption for producing a GB is much lower on 5G as compared to 4G and 3G. That means we will indirectly contributing to sustainability as well. Lower pollution, lower emissions, lower transmission power. That's the most important part, what we believe we are going to give it to the society back. I think talking something about the ecosystem maturity, there are 4 pillars which we believe are going to contribute, which are required for our ecosystem to develop so that the 5G is adapted as quickly as possible and at a scale. One is definitely the applications part. All of us have talked about it. Second is the robust rollouts. I think we as a Airtel are ready to roll out 5G as quickly as possible. We have done trials that's past now. It's about 1 year back. In the meantime, we have also created infrastructures on the back end which are 5G ready today. And we, as quickly as we can, we will roll out 5G. The robust network is the second most important pillar. The third most important pillar is the device, which is actually the first one, but I'm saying it on number 3 is the device ecosystem. Affordable device is the right metric to look at. When we look at 3G to 4G consumption, I think the most part of that was done because the device availability or the devices were made affordable. I think the same story is going to happen for 5G as well. The devices have to be affordable, and I don't think that there is time that we'll get to the levels where it should have been in India. And India should not be deprived of 5G adoption just because of the that it would not happen. The fourth most important part is the chipset manufacturing, which is today it's at a level which is little bit matured, but I think we are expecting chipsets to be more efficient, more powerful, more energy efficient. I think these are the 4 pillars where 5G adaptability is going to be impacted if we don't get these 4 pillars right. I think on all of this put together, I think the theme of this was the economic benefits. I think all of this put together will bring us economically, I think the growth will be much higher than what we have seen in 3G and 3G to 4G. The aspiration of India to become 1 trillion economy, I think the most part of it would get the substantial part of the growth or the economic growth would led by a digital transformation, and 5G will ride definitely on that. Regarding readiness on Airtel, I think I already talked about it. We already have connected more than 1 million enterprises because we had talked about enterprises mostly for 5G. So I just wanted to touch enterprise connectivity, what Airtel has does. I think we have connected more than 1 million enterprises, SMBs, and they will be the first ones to adapt 5G because the infrastructure is ready for them, and they have already are experiencing a 4G network and a connected network. I think they would be the first one to adapt to those 5G services. I think I won't be taking much time between you and dinner. So I would thank you. Thank you very much and have a good evening.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, may I now invite Mr. Ravi Gandhi, President and Chief of Public Policy and Regulatory, Reliance Jio, for the operator address. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I'll not take much time, but I would certainly like to disagree with many of the previous speaker on 5G is completely a new technology. It is not a linear innovation over the existing technology. It's going to change life. So when other speakers were speaking, it just struck my mind that was the wheel a bigger invention or electric vehicle is a bigger invention for humankind? Was 2G a bigger invention or innovation, or 4G a bigger innovation? So every technological innovation has changed the life of people. I see 2G is much bigger innovation than actually what 4G would have done or 3G would have done. Or a wheel is much bigger innovation than what EV would do. Because if there was no wheel, there would not have been EV. What is 5G? 5G, when we build telecom network, basically for connectivity. Connectivity requires 2 things. One, the capacity. Second, the connectivity, the capacity and the coverage. And the capacity and coverage should have reliability and very low latency. How do we achieve that? So I think the two things which 5G brings in or optimize more is it reduces the latency by the way of going towards the user, going with the small cells. I'll come to that, how it actually changes the life and how it changes the life of operators and why it is very critical when we talk about, say, huge investment, massive investment and all those things. And high bandwidth. High bandwidth, one would easily say, okay, go for densification or spectral efficiency or more spectrum. So all these three things would actually bring in more and more bandwidth and more capacity. And go towards the user, very, very close to the user, and increase the computing speed. So that reduces the latency. The moment you have these two things, high capacity and low latency, we may have many different names for that, technological name. But what it does is, it provides you capability to create new and new use cases, which earlier were not possible. Obviously, there were a lot of use cases which were not possible in 2G because there was no internet, there was no data. So only the use cases which were there were revolving around voice, which was the predominant service of that technology. Now, after 4G use cases, we have become more educated. So we are talking about use cases when 4G was not there and there were not many use cases like today. If I go to have just Pani Puri, the person would say, okay, pay by UPI, don't pay by cash. So this was not there prior to 4G. So this is a big innovation. Nobody is carrying cash. Now you just carry your mobile and your life is sorted. If you are to have a morning flight at say 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, whole night you can't sleep because whether your taxi wala will come in the morning or not. So now with Uber, Ola, all this aggregation of taxis, you don't have to worry about it. This is another innovation which has been riding over 4G. Now, after dinner, you don't have to actually pick up your car and go for an ice cream to India Gate. You just have to order on Zomato or Swiggy. You'll have it. That's another use case of 4G. These use cases were not possible before 4G. To some extent with 3G, but not before that. So, but till the time these use cases actually came, we never discussed about it. So similarly, while we are trying to discuss so many use cases, we don't know actually which use cases are going to be. Once the networks are there, we have very innovative brains in country, across country. And while we can imagine these kind of use cases would be there, but there may be many use cases which may come. Some of the use cases, because everybody talked about use cases, I should also say some use cases. It's going to be death of PlayStation. The children are not going to spend 50,000 rupees to buy a PlayStation now. This is going to be one big use case. With the help of your mobile device or any of the device, you can, with the thin browser, you can actually play live games, low latency application. Very simple to adopt. Many other like e-commerce. E-commerce was also, I think, one of the application which was on basically on 4G. But this may change. This may change with the virtual world. So you don't have to just see the photograph. You may actually get much more than that, 3D view, virtual immersive experience and all those things. So it may change the way we actually shop. So while the applications like agriculture, etc., these are very good, required for society, humankind, but those may take time. But the application which I am telling may immediately be picked up by obviously the next generation. So 5G, the moment you have very high capacity and very low latency network, we are going to see completely different kind of applications. Is the only thing where I would like to stop on. As far as use cases is concerned, I don't want to actually speculate on use cases. Second is we talk about the private network, enterprises, and all those things. So there are some oxymoron like private network and cloud native, Open RAN and private network. Private network, which is working on a public cloud. So I think these are the kind of things probably we need to see how can there be a private network which is on an open public cloud. That is one. Second, we talk about security and open network. Very, very high secure network and open network. These are going to exist. We have to live with it. So we can't have completely closed network without any access from anywhere, but at the same time, we have all different vendors talking on open stacks, open standards, open protocols. So that's the life which we have to live with. And 5G brings all this. So cyber security, etc., everything. When there were 2G kind of networks, which were closed, one vendor, specialized operating system, etc. So those were closed networks, no outside access. So security was not as important as one would see today. When we have open networks, connected and created over the public network. So a network over the network. Security becomes very important. OTT communication, WhatsApp, instant messaging, voice over IP. These were creation of 4G. So the industry used to talk about same service, same rule, OTT communication and all those things. So these were the things which were debated when 4G was being launched. So these were creation of 4G. With 5G, there should be some new creation. So this new creation is network over the top. So it would be network over the network. So you don't require to have actually network to provide network services. So you can just plug and play some kind of RAN like Wi-Fi 6, some server somewhere across the world, just connect it and you start providing network services, not this communication services. So these are the kind of innovations which we are going to see. And let's see how we address that. And the third change which we are going to see is in the 2G era or 3G era, we used to see the kind of resources which we are talking about. Access spectrum, GSM spectrum, this is CDMA spectrum, this is backhaul spectrum, this is microwave spectrum. So all those were compartmentalized. When it came to 4G, then we used to call liberalized spectrum. Now you have the spectrum which can be used for CDMA, GSM, etc., so many things. But still we have access spectrum, backhaul spectrum, satellite spectrum. With 5G, with release 16, 17, as was the previous speaker, in fact, in the opening presentation of ITSI, we saw it's going to be one network. When I joined service 30 years ago, when I started learning about telecom 30 years ago, somebody told me that every newborn baby would be allocated one unique number. And if that number is not accessible, that person is no more. So that kind of network, probably what we are trying to achieve through these release 16, release 17, release 18 with NTN, non-terrestrial network, satellite network, HAVs, integrated access backhaul, etc., etc. So many things. You carry one device. You don't have to bother about which network you have. Inside, you are on Wi-Fi. The moment you go out, you may be on 5G. The moment you go further in the uncovered area, you'll have satellite connectivity. It's the same number, same device, same session would continue. So you're going to have integrated networks. One network, one number, one device, seamless connectivity, no session breaking is I think what I feel the 5G will give us. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much indeed, sir. And now, ladies and gentlemen, for the industry address, may I invite Mr. Sandeep Saxena, who is Head of Pre-Sales in Mobile Networks, Nokia, India. And let's put our hands together to welcome him.
Very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sandeep and I'm representing Nokia here. And the topic today is that 5G is driving the next phase of economic growth. Now, let me start with something that we have listened multiple times. And ladies and gentlemen, kindly allow me to repeat this at the risk of boring each one of you. So once again, let's briefly recap on the 5G capabilities, what 5G can do. Number one, ultra broadband, which means data rates of more than 10 Gbps. Number two, connectivity, which means 10 to 100 times more devices as compared to what an LTE or a 4G network can do. And number three, the ultra low latencies in the range of less than 1 millisecond. These are the three basic capabilities of a 5G network. Now, what do they do? The high data rates in excess of 10 Gbps, they enable enhanced mobile broadband. Connectivity, where we have 10 to 100 times more devices, they enable massive machine type communication. The ultra low latency to the tune of less than 1 millisecond, they enable the ultra reliable and low latency communication. And these are basically the capabilities of 5G, which provide a perfect launch pad for the fourth industrial revolution, which is nothing but Industry 4.0. So much so that the technology has the power to transform the sectors of our economy. And we talk about manufacturing, retail, information communication technology, logistics, healthcare, education, entertainment, gaming, you name the industry, and 5G has the potential to transform each one of these sectors. And every time these sectors get transformed thanks to 5G, there is a significant contribution in the economic growth for that particular country. There have been many studies. They've been done by various research companies, various consulting companies. And the resultant is that, 5G will contribute to the GDP of each and every country. And the collective contribution of 5G will vary anything between 8 trillion to 8 to 10 trillions by the year 2030. In one of the studies conducted by PwC, it was indicated that the 5 key sectors by the year 2030 alone will contribute to approximately 1.3 trillion worth of GDP growth. And that's the power of 5G resulting into this economic growth. One of the studies which was conducted by GSMA suggested that each one of the country, with the launch of 5G by the year 2030, will be able to increase their GDP anything between 0.3 to 0.6%. Now, that's what is the capability of 5G to drive economic growth everywhere. Now, what is going to happen to India? In India, it is expected that with the uptake of 5G till 2040, the contribution towards GDP would be anything around $500 billion. And this uptake is expected something around 2025. And within the next 15 years, you will see that, okay, the GDP is going collectively by almost like $500 billion. And that's a significant contribution. And the GDP increase by 2040 is expected to be anything around 0.6%. Now, where is this contribution coming from? So when we look at the benefits per sector, the biggest contribution comes from manufacturing, which is as high as 20%. But manufacturing, retail, information communication technology and agriculture. These four sectors together will account for approximately 50% of contribution when we talk about GDP growth. The biggest service sectors, and I think Atul briefly touched upon that, would be education and healthcare. These are going to be the two biggest sectors when we talk about the service industry. And that's basically, the sector distribution when we talk about economic growth. From a use case perspective, the first thing is enhanced mobile broadband. And eMBB, what it will provide basically is a very, very kind of a reliable broadband with an outreach to various mass segments. When we talk about big deployments, when we talk about mass events there, that's where, the mobile broadband will provide that kind of a, reliable network there. The other aspect of mobile broadband is fixed wireless access. Fixed wireless access will provide a very reliable broadband for number one, suburban areas and the areas with low density. And number two, they will provide a very reliable broadband when we talk about home and business environment. Ultra reliable and low latency network. This is needed for sectors like manufacturing, for transport, for healthcare, for logistics. Massive machine type communication. This is used for launching smart cities, smart infrastructure, smart utilities, where there is a need that there are multiple devices, hundreds of devices, thousands of devices are talking to each other. And that's basically, the kind of contribution which is coming by use case. Approximately 40% of that will come from eMBB plus FWA together. And approximately 30% each will come from URLLC and MMTC. So that's basically, the contribution by sectors. Just to share with you a glimpse of, what we have been able to do. And when I say what we have been able to do, it is essentially our CSPs, what, they have been able to do. So with the 5G trial spectrum that, our CSPs have been granted about a year back, they have been able to demonstrate multiple use cases. And this is just a glimpse of that. Not everything, but just a glimpse of that. Immersive video entertainment, where we talk about, 4K kind of an experience with multiple angles, being captured, with a camera. Robotics and AI, this is a remote robotic operation, which is powered by, automatic intelligence, and then connected devices. This was a combination of connected devices and, provision of a private kind of a wireless network there. 5G in remote areas was nothing but, it was basically a healthcare which was provided in a remote area. And then you see the 5G connected ambulance, once again, use case, for healthcare. And then there were use cases related to smart enterprises and smart city solutions. Now, this is, as I said, is a glimpse of many use cases which have been demonstrated. This is something, which has already been kind of developed, demonstrated in a almost live network using the 5G spectrum by our CSPs. So here we are, ladies and gentlemen, with 5G enabling the use cases, with 5G providing a massive potential for the economic growth. And now the question is that what needs to be done next? Now, what needs to be done next basically is nothing but how to accelerate 5G in India. And the first point here is ecosystem development. And when I'm talking about ecosystem development, I'm talking about a larger ecosystem, which starts from a spectrum. And all of us, we have already seen that, okay, there has been a very, good spectrum auction. The spectrum in fairly decent quantity has been, purchased or, brought by the CSPs. Now, the second is the device ecosystem. Now, what we need basically are the 5G handsets. And it is not just only the availability of the 5G handsets. More importantly, it is the affordability of the 5G handsets. And gradually, when we evolve from enhanced mobile broadband towards MMTC, it is basically also the availability of the 5G devices, the IoT devices. So that's basically the kind of a device ecosystem which needs to be made available, for the industry here. The third point is the electronic infrastructure. We have heard people talking about 5G core. We have heard people talking about 5G radio. A very important aspect of this electronic infrastructure is the backhaul. Today, there are hardly 30 to 35% sites or the towers which enjoy the access of fiber. what happens to the remaining 65 to 70% sites? They also need to have a very robust kind of a backhaul. So we need to ensure that, okay, there are technologies like microwave E-band, which can provide an equally robust kind of a backhaul arrangement. And when we have the devices ready, when we have the 5G core ready, when we have the 5G radio ready, when we have, our backhaul ready, the next thing which is extremely important is when all these use cases, we see that, okay, there is so much of a data, so much of an information which is flowing across, the availability of a robust and a very strong end-to-end security solution. Just to ensure that the information, the data which is being flown doesn't get hacked, doesn't get endangered, and all of us are absolutely safe and we remain in a safe and secure environment. So the availability of this kind of a end-to-end strong security solution there. So that's all about the ecosystem development. And the second is the digitalization of network deployment. I think one of my fellow colleagues, he spoke about the speed with which 5G needs to be rolled out. And when we talk about this speed, it is all about rolling out the 5G core, the 5G radio, the backhaul. And when we talk about the 5G radios there, the 5G base stations there, what it needs for a faster rollout of all these 5G base stations, we talk about digital site engineering, we talk about digital designs, we talk about installations and commissionings, which are done in a very effective and a faster manner. We talk about digital optimization. We talk about digital optimization and then digital acceptance. In nutshell, what we are trying to do is that we are trying to get a zero-touch implementation of each one of these sites so that we can ensure a very fast rollout. And these faster rollouts will improve efficiency, will improve quality, and they will also have a very significant positive impact towards the environment, because the emission levels of carbon dioxide will go down drastically when we adopt these digitalization technologies. And this is what is needed in terms of the faster network rollout, a complete suite of digitalization techniques. And the third thing is the collaboration for the India-specific use cases. It's very important that there has to be a larger collaboration among CSPs, among the use case providers, Department of Telecom, the startups, the academia. What we are doing at Nokia is that we are already working with a lot of startups. We are supporting these startups in making the India-specific use cases, and not just only supporting them, helping them in inviting them to our labs in Bangalore, where they can come and they can test their use cases in a simulated 5G environment. Now, very recently, there has been a kind of an inter-ministerial committee set up, which was an initiative of DOT, where 14 ministries, they came together, and they're working together, in coming up with suite of India-specific use cases. So this is something which is a very welcome step in the direction of this collaboration. Now, the fourth thing is ease of doing business. Ease of doing business, we all know that, okay, what needs to be done here? There are a lot of policies, practices, processes which need to be streamlined from the point of view of ease of doing business. We have already done something. So we see that, okay, at the time of a spectrum auction, there were already certain kind of changes which were brought about. We all know the various initiatives which PMO is driving. So when we talk about Make in India, when we talk about Digital India, when we talk about Skill India, there are already certain initiatives which are being taken. Very recently, there were certain amendments in the right of way rules. So these are certain ease of doing business initiatives. We all know that, okay, India was standing in 2014 somewhere around in the position of 142 in terms of ease of doing business index. And from 2014 to 2020 or 22, as per this World Bank report, we are now standing at position number 63. So there is a development, there is a huge progress that we have made, but there is still a way to go in terms of doing more when we talk about ease of doing business. Last but not the least, skill development and awareness. As we know that, okay, 5G offers a lot of potential. They offer a lot of potential for everybody for citizens, for human beings, for industries, for everybody. And therefore, it is very, very important for all of us to have a platform which can create this kind of an awareness, which can impart the skill which is needed to human beings. At Nokia, what we have done is that we have partnered with NIIT and we have come up with certain basic 5G certification courses. And these are available to everybody. Anybody can come and apply for these 5G certification courses just to know what 5G is all about, just to know that, okay, what is the real potential behind 5G? So ladies and gentlemen, 5G offers a lot of power. 5G has the power to transform lives. It has the power to transform economy. It has the power to transform the social sector, and it has the power to transform all of us. So it's time that, okay, we all get together and we all get started. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. And ladies and gentlemen, now in the end for the discussions, may I hand over to our distinguished moderator, Mr. Kunal Bajaj, CEO and co-founder, Cloud Extel. Over to you, sir.
Great. So good evening, everyone. I think we are at the final stage, and we can actually say that the only thing standing between yourselves and dinner is this panel discussion. So given that I believe I made the mistake of sharing all my questions too early with the speakers, because every single one of them has been addressed by every speaker. So I think we're going to go off script a little bit and ask everyone a couple of new questions so that we get some new insights. And of course, you know, before digging into this, need to recognize Shashi and Bharat Exhibitions for putting this together and getting all of us together here. I think it's a wonderful exchange of thoughts, and obviously without that, you know, we wouldn't be able to have these kinds of discussions. So we'll limit it maybe to just 2 questions so that we can then quickly get to dinner after that. And I think, you know, we'll start first with SP Kochar Saab. If you wouldn't mind kicking off the discussion. I think the first question, and what everybody here, maybe as end users, as enterprise customers, want to really know is, and we've heard it from our operator speakers, but are we ready to actually launch? Are we going to see, you know, 5G full-fledged by the end of the current financial year, available to all users?
Thank you for that question, Kunal. That's a loaded question. You know, yes, we are ready. We will launch, but will we launch pan-India is a moot question. You know, business imperatives come into play, investments come into play, and whether there is a requirement of going pan-India at the same time. So we will be going selective, I suppose. And I think more details will come to you from the operators themselves. As far as I'm concerned, I think we will be going selective in various geographies, but launch we will.
Great. So Atul, if we can just pick up from that, you know, there's been a lot of announcements, a lot of press about what your guys' plans are. Can you, I think for everyone here, just elaborate on how aggressively you guys plan to roll out, and what are some of the, you know, whatever you can share publicly, what are some of the targets that we can look for in terms of availability?
I think what I can. Hello. So I think it's a loaded question for me as well. So I think what I can say is that we are building up the infrastructure on the back end, and we are ready. We would go selective just because of the various, because it's a startup, and material deliveries and all will generally take time. But I can just say that in few quarters, I think we can have a substantial rollouts across the country.
Okay, so Ravi, I'll give you an opportunity at the other end. You know, as one of the other major operators, I think you guys have an aggressive target of the value which you've announced publicly. So how close are we to that, and how widespread do we see deployments next month coming?
Hello. It's not a loaded question for me because I don't know the answer. So I know as much as you know, and of course, 3 parts. We are ready. We will launch. We'll go everywhere. That's what I know.
Okay, great. So I'll just, you know, similar question. I'll take it to Sandeep. I mean, you're a major player in this ecosystem to make these guys be able to actually fulfill these promises. Again, as Atul said, it's a startup. there's a logistics, there's a supply chain, there's installation, integration. There's a long way to go before you actually turn it on. So from your perspective in providing the solution, how far along are we in that process?
So I need to be a little careful because I'm sitting between two of my customers. So, but yes, as I said that, okay, I mean, there is a decent amount of readiness. I mean, we have been engaging with the CSPs for quite some time. So it is almost about a year ago that when we started this engagement in terms of 5G trials. So this helped us basically, to understand their entire system, their ecosystem, their processes. And this basically, formed a kind of an enabler for all of us, to get ready for 5G. So 5G readiness, we have kind of ensured for quite some time, and it is just the time, for the final leg of execution. As you said that, okay, from a supply chain perspective, from a delivery perspective, and we will stick to our commitments which we have made to our customers and ensure that, okay, whatever their plans are to roll out 5G, we'll help them, in doing that.
Great. Thank you, Sandeep. So, Nuno, I mean, you've seen many 5G networks now launch around the world, right? What do you see as the tipping point in terms of, you spoke about whether it was an architecture or was an application stack, but what do you see as the tipping point when 5G goes from being niche to actually becoming mainstream in those countries?
I think going back to the point we discussed earlier is what is really the key application, right? I fundamentally do not believe it's a consumer-driven transformation. If any, on the consumer side, I would probably see maybe a faster uptake, especially in a geography like India on FWA scenarios. But it remains to be seen from an enterprise enablement or specific industry enablement, what would be the ones that will really make this at scale. And I think as an industry, the only thing we can do is enable innovation, provide all sorts of capabilities to the ecosystem so that we can find that.
Got it. And coming to Avinash, you sit in an interesting position where you have just as many, developed, quote unquote, mature countries as you have developing countries. And if I remember correctly, you said 5 out of the 8 countries have launched 5G already. So can you maybe compare and contrast the developed market launches versus your emerging market launches, and what can India learn from that?
Yes, it looks like that there is a difference when you look from a number perspective. But I see, if you look at the geographies we have launched, like 4 Nordic countries, the area of operation is quite limited, right? The number of subscribers are quite limited. And then we have those kind of early investment potentials, which we could leverage there, right? But it is not like that case that we are delaying Asia because we have launched Thailand. Malaysia, as you know that it has to be, that kind of a government sponsored, which will be launched, or so we can't do that. We'll be soon launching in Bangladesh also. So it's a matter of bit time that it was a bit delayed, but ultimately, if you see the use cases, the potential of use cases, I see same whether it's a Nordics or it's India or it's a Europe, because it is going to transform the industry, right? And that's what we are strongly believing, that when we are leveraging the whole ecosystem, it's not only the 5G, it's leveraging the ecosystem. And when you go to the end user with the right solution, which he is looking for, then those because industry verticals will more or less look at similar kind of a solutions, right? And if you are able to provide them, then adoption will also be very fast. That's how at least we see.
Great. No, thank you for that, Avinash. So just do one more quick round of questions, and I think this probably will be a little bit more of a curveball. We'll start with Atul maybe this time. Are we going to make money on 5G?
My job is to deploy the network, and I'm not a finance guy, so next time I'll send a finance guy.
No. So, okay, I'll let you dodge that one. Maybe we ask, Raviji, what is your outlook in terms of, how do you guys see improvement in economics coming from 5G? And, do we see that, like we've seen from 2G, 3G to 4G, is it just, consumers asking for more at the same price, or are we going to see some differentiation this time around?
It's even not the finance guy who would know the answer of this. As you're right, your question contains the answer. You have not seen the revenue growth when you moved from 2G to 3G to 4G to 5G, obviously. There would be some growth because of the use cases which would come from, say, enterprise segment and other segments. But as far as consumer revenue is concerned, because the paying capacity would limit the kind of revenue which you can expect from them.
So Nuno, again, is it, you've made it clear a couple of times that the real use case is enterprise. So is it because of these new enterprise use cases that you see more revenues and more ability to invest really coming in the 5G environment than what we've seen before?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, if we look at from a consumer standpoint, we've pretty much saturated all markets. If we look at it from a global perspective, as a consumer, and I'm speaking on my behalf, I will not pay more per month for a mobile service, irrespective if I can get the average, I don't know, say 30 megabits a second I get today, as opposed versus if I were to get 100 or 200, right? So I don't think the economics is in the consumer. Now, granted, there are specific consumer use cases that you could exploit, like FWA, or maybe monetizing some specific sectors. But apart from that, I do believe the revenue potential, the monetization potential is on the industries, right? It's monetizing massive scale IoTs, monetizing use cases that benefit the society, and the end user doesn't realize what he's paying. Is spending money on an experience which happens to be enabled by the technology. So yes.
Okay, good. Thank you for that. And then so Avinash, I mean, again, in your role in digital, which of the enterprise applications have you seen actually have the biggest impact on revenue monetization for new applications, network slicing, or whatever else it may be? Where do you see the biggest impact really coming from?
Okay. I'll not say it's an easy question. As we all discussing, will there be a single killer application? I don't think there will be a single killer application. I've given you example of defense, right? Now defense, if they adopt a public network on a private slice, now think about because they are looking for a long term, they have investment potentials. It's a very different kind of a ballgame, right? If you look at the disaster management, right? They are also for a long haul. They have a money, right? The only thing is, are we able to offer them a right use case which they can adopt? So what we are seeing is that wherever we are really trying to adopt those or showing those pilot use cases, like the port organization in Malaysia was giving example, they really see a value in that, right? Because the money they are going to save, money they are going to augment because of these use cases is significantly high. So I don't think because just application or something, people will adopt. People will adopt if they really see a value of cost saving or a revenue monetization. And that's definitely a big potential looking into 5G and all the ecosystem.
And so for the very end, Sandeep, given that obviously the network providers in the past sold networks, but for 5G, obviously we have to sell a lot more. So how are you supporting operators in creating these monetization opportunities for, say, enterprise applications or other sorts of applications where they will be able to, actually monetize the investment that they're making into 5G networks?
So from the point of view of a technology provider or a network provider, what we are trying to do is that, give them a kind of a setup on which they can build their monetization strategies. So for example, from a technology perspective, we give them things like slicing. We give them, different kind of architectures, NSA, SA. We sometimes, depending upon the needs, we try to bring, things closer to the edge. so mobile edge computing. So, from a technology perspective, we provide all these kind of enablers which help them, in kind of building their own monetization strategies.
Great. So thank you everyone for the rapid fire round of question answer. We'll hand it back over to Shashi and his team for wrapping up for the day.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. And ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together for all those wonderful presentation addresses we had. So ladies and gentlemen, I would now request Mr. Shashidharan to do the honors of presenting a token of gratitude and appreciation to our special guest, Lieutenant General Dr. S.P. Kochhar, Director General COAI. Thank you very much indeed, sir. Thank you, Mr. Shashidharan, for doing the honors. I would now request Lieutenant General Dr. S.P. Kochhar to kindly do the honors of presenting token of gratitude to our eminent speakers. To our keynote speaker, Mr. Nuno Saraiva. Thank you very much indeed for that wonderful keynote presentation. To Mr. Ravi Gandhi. Thank you, sir, for the operator address. To Mr. Atul Sachdeva. Thanks, sir, for the wonderful operator address. To Mr. Avinash Mittal. Thank you very much indeed, sir. To Mr. Sandeep Saxena. Thank you, sir, for that informative industry address we had from you. And to our distinguished moderator, Mr. Kunal Bajaj. We thank General Kochhar for doing the honors. Thank you very much indeed. And now I invite Mr. Shashidharan to propose the vote of thanks.
Thank you very much, General Kochhar, Director General COI, distinguished speakers off the dais, on the dais. I don't want to take much of a time. I know Dekha Sahab wanted to say a few words. Can we have a mic just for 1 minute? He was the Director Police Wireless, former Director Police Wireless. So he just wanted to share something on the police spectrum or something he wanted to share. Yes, sir. Dekha Sahab.
Ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to share some experience and observation. In 2001, Gujarat earthquake, we faced a problem. The wirelesses came from all over the world. We could not use them in Gujarat because of frequency mismatch. So we suggested to ITU that for disaster management, frequencies should be reserved throughout the globe. After 4 years debate, ITU agreed to decide that there will be slot reserved from the disaster management purposes. Now today I was very impressed to see that point, that non-public and public integration, which we are facing in police wireless. Because police wireless is a close-up network. So we could not talk to outside. In disaster management, this is very much a necessity. But this 5G is providing non-public, public integration. That will be a big advantage to forces. Police wireless also runs some 2-3 lakhs of wireless stations. Then defense is huge number. So I see the prospects of 5G in that. And then this one, integration with satellites. Because we in BSF, I was IT communication in BSF, in border communication in border was a problem. At least video communication. So with this, we'll have a video communication from the borders also. Lot of promises to the forces also. That is the point I wanted to highlight.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So I wish you all once again a happy Onam, which as I told you that today and tomorrow we are celebrating. And thanks for Yojana Madam, she is here. She is also from the state of Kerala and she is the Director of Finance of BSNL. Thank you, Madam, for coming. Thank you, General Sanjeev Sharma and his team. Be here witnessing the 5G India 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for all of you to joining us on this. So next year we'll see you on 6G. The next event is on data center in the month of November. Tomorrow we start at sharp at 10 o'clock and the session is chaired by none other than Colonel Vikram Tivatia, the Deputy Director General of CUI is already here. So we sharp 10 o'clock, we start tomorrow. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much indeed. And ladies and gentlemen, before we all move out for the dinner, I have a small announcement for all our delegates. All our delegates are kindly requested to carry your delegate badges with you when you come over here tomorrow, so that you do not need to do any registration with us once again. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, we will have networking tree starting from 9 a.m. onwards. We request you all to be here in time so that we can begin with the proceedings sharp at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Thank you very much indeed. Have a wonderful evening ahead. Enjoy the dinner. Have a safe drive home. Good evening and namaskar.